We do know that all ethnic groups experience dementia. We all know that all cultures experience dementia, but the percent of people within those cultures that get dementia varies greatly. And it has a lot to do with diet, exercise, and inclusion. In other words, how much are elders and people actually considered vital to the economy, vital to life, vital to the social fabric? How much are they included as part of the whole? Because when people have value and purpose, it appears that their risk of developing dementia drops. If you do have the makings of dementia in your brain, I'm not going to keep it from ever happening, but we could possibly buy ourselves some time. And if I don't have the makings of dementia in my brain right now, I don't need to up the ante. I want to keep the risk low, because I don't really have any desire to have this in the house. It's hard enough when it's in your house. So what we're going to do is talk about what are some of the things we could be thinking about as things that are risk categories, and then what can we do that goes past just risk reduction to health promotion. So we're going to do risk reduction, then health promotion. And if you go back 2 generations in your family, it's pretty clear to see there were some very big differences as far as activity levels on a routine basis, in which I get total body activity. Do you work hard but not move a lot? And this is just another way of thinking about your brain is exhausted at the end of the day, but you actually physically have not done what you would want and need to do to exercise. And so you exercised your brain, but you didn't exercise your body, but the two are connected. And over time, what isn't happening for the body starts to bother the brain. The brain can only experience the elevation of respiration and heart rate and blood pressure when the whole body is challenged. Within 2 generations, we become incredibly sedentary beings. We have to go to the gym to work out. We have to create these opportunities to exercise. Before, our entire life was basically, we had to do things to live. That's just how it was. Our work pattern, our taking care of making our food, getting our houses clean, how we did things, it required a lot of physical activity. Now in buildings, we have elevators, we have escalators, we have desks that allow us to sit. We have a lot of jobs that require us to use our eyes and our heads and our hands and our feet, but not our whole bodies. And so although we're exhausted at the end of a day, we've done a lot of sitting down or hanging out and not being very physically active. There's a lot of wanting to get in shape and starting out and then falling off the wagon. Many of these programs that are out there are designed to get you excited at first, but unless you figure out how to stay engaged with them, what you'll do is you'll do them on average from about 1 to 15 times, and then you find that you start to fall back off again, and you're back to old previous patterns. If you can make it to approximately 6 months of a new activity, you're much more likely to sustain it past 6 months. Do you sleep less than 6 to 8 hours a night routinely? Like every now and then it's fine, but if you're low on the sleep scale, really looking at what you're doing around sleep, that might be making it hard. And what it is about sleep that's maybe, and I will say, however, be aware that if you use meditation during the day, or if you are a after lunch zoner, some people have a different sleep pattern than most people appreciate. It turns out only recently are all humans expected to sleep 6 to 8 hours straight at night. And that's not actually an always pattern. It's a relatively new pattern. It's been historic that many people had an afternoon siesta, and they would actually take a decent amount of rest or relaxation in the afternoon, which is when they were digesting their food of the heavier meal. And then they would come back online, and they may sleep less during the night and get up very early in the morning, but they had a total of 6 to 8 hours. So this doesn't have to be 6 to 8 sequential hours. And that's where sometimes we get a little rigid because of the Western mindset, where in other countries the flexibility is there. We need to look at the sleep cycle that makes sense for this human being instead of trying to make them fit into some grid that somebody came up with. The first step in doing something about this is we've got to look in the mirror and go, okay, well, are we going to break the chain or are we going to keep it going? It's sort of like that chain thing. Are we just going to keep on being another link in there? Or are we going to start going, okay, wait a minute. So what can I do and what should I do? And what am I going to commit myself to? So that's what I'm going to focus on next is what should and could we do here? Because we now know, yeah, there are things we could be opting for. It's hard. It's not going to be easy, but are we worth it? And I think all too often we forget, yeah, we are. We are worth it. And the simple message really is, if it's good for your heart, it is good for your brain. But is it good enough? And that's where you can do good things for your heart and still not do quite enough for your brain, because the brain's at the top of the system. And it has to be pretty much peak to keep it going well. So the top 3 things that people are currently talking about now that should be things we should be thinking about on a daily basis is exercising more, use your brain. And this doesn't mean do the same thing the same way. You got to use your brain in different ways that are interesting and fun, but we don't want to stress your brain out. We want to give it opportunities to get excited and to eat fairly well and to eat moderately. So exercise. Here's what the current thinking is, and it actually hasn't changed in the last 5 years. Before that, it was a little different, but now here's what it is. You do want to get your doctor to say okay, mostly just to make sure that you don't have something going on that you haven't thought about when you start up your exercise pattern, because people who have problems with heart rate or people have problems with certain things going on, we just want to have an awareness. The doc knows what you're up to. But then here's the more important one. You got to pick something you like to do. People tend to pick things they think are good for them, but not what they like. If you don't actually like what you're doing, here's a bad news bears. What will happen after 3 months is you tend to quit doing it as much. You find reasons, you have accidents, you make mistakes. Because when you don't do what you like, your brain isn't getting what it wants. And when you don't get what you want, you don't need it anymore. The thing about exercise, if we're trying to do absolutely a good thing for ourselves, is it turns out of all the kinds of exercise we could do, which are things like flexibility, their weight training, their isometrics, their isotonics, it turns out that aerobic is the best thing for your brain, but aerobic crossing the midline or using both sides of your body for something tends to be probably the best. And we want to do it to a level where the best way, just quick fix, quick measure, is that you're a little short of breath when you're doing it. You don't want to be laboring. That's a little too much. You need to drop it back a little bit. But when you're exercising, you want to be you don't want to be able to talk in full sentences and pause that way. You do want to be able to say words. So one of the things that you may want to do with your buddy is offer a quick back and forth. So you doing all right? Yeah, I'm okay. Yeah. So what do you think about this hill? That's a pretty step, because what you're actually doing is checking on each other's rate. Are you doing about the right amount of work? And it turns out that if you want to do what's best for your brain, you want to do about 15 to 20 minutes at a time. It's a lot better than doing it longer than that or doing it shorter than that. 20, maybe 30 minutes at the most is a good workout session for your brain. If you're doing more than that, then you're probably doing it for the cardiovascular benefit. But for your brain, 20 minutes is a good chunk. It circulates well in your brain. Your brain is getting the benefit from it. It's gotten the pump. It's getting the rush. It's doing all the good things it should be doing. And it's also, when you keep it at 70%, it's in the good range. There's a group out there, it's called Orange Theory Fitness. They call it the orange zone. So you're not overdoing it, but you're not underdoing it. So you're challenging, and that's what you're looking for. Current thinking is at least 100 minutes a week, 120 to 150, even better. But we want to get it up there and keep it up there with some kind of routine, because your brain needs that routinization of getting it up and keeping it up for a little bit. And the goal, if you do not have a pacemaker in, is about 70% of your maximum heart rate. And the quick fix on that, the quick measure of that, is to have 220, subtract your age, and times 0.7. That gives you your maximum heart rate you're shooting at. And that's what you want to be. You want to be at about that rate when you're exercising. More than that, faster than that, you're going a little too much. Cut it back, because we want it to be energizing, not exhausting. Second piece, use your brain. And here's the tricky part. Think of what you've always liked doing and pick something different. Because the tricky part in the human brain is once you've mastered something and you're really good at it and you really like it and you do it a lot, it turns out your brain goes, okay, I got that. And it doesn't actually build new pathways. All it does is use existing pathways. And using existing pathways doesn't promote brain health. It just keeps going what you got going. Now, if you're living with dementia and we're trying to maintain pathways, hey, keep it going. But if you don't think you have dementia, and as far as you know, the symptoms aren't present, then you want to challenge your brain in different ways, in new ways, to build new pathways. Because once those pathways get laid down, then you can start to use them and then you can do more. And that's part of what happens, we think, after about age 25, is we get sort of sedentary in our brain thinking. After we've gone to college or after we finish high school and after we get our first few jobs and after we know what we're going to do, we have our career path. It's not uncommon for people to settle into that pattern. And unfortunately, unless you like change and like new and like different, you're not actually challenging your brain as much as you think you are. More fruits and vegetables with less fat and sugar. And the fresher and the more naturally occurring, the better. More water with less coffee, tea, and soda. And that's my little drug of choice, is my coffee. And so getting myself out of those habits is hard. More omega-3 fats with less trans fats and a lot less of the partially hydrogenated. Trying to eliminate those from our diet because we truly do not know what happens when we get them in. We don't know what happens when they start to build up. We aren't sure. We don't have enough story. We don't have enough history. We don't have enough research. But being aware that it's an unknown. More fresh food, broiled meat, and whole grains. Less fried food and packaged. The only other thing I want to add in about the possibility is to really realize that when we're looking at exercising and using our brain, that personal preferences and values matter, and personality traits still do matter, and your life story matters, and how you fill up and make your day work and what works for you. But I'm going to give you two examples. Like, what gives you pleasure? Paying bills, washing dishes? Well, maybe what we need to do is take those things and figure out how to revamp them so they give us something we like, doing something we don't like. So looking at how we could take paying bills and make it something different than what it is. Because if we're doing it and we don't like it, we're spending part of our day doing something that brings us down. So is there a way to make it something where we figure out another way to get it done? We pass it off, we share it out, we do it with a partner, which could be as much for the person living with dementia as it is for us. And in washing dishes, is it about washing dishes or could it be about socializing? So one of the things to really consider is, can we take something that has to get done and can we turn it into something that gives us moments of pleasure? Because if we're trying to keep our brains healthy, the more we do that we don't like, the higher risk we run that we're getting in a rut and we're getting down. And it's simply something, maybe it does need to get done. What can we do to fill it with joy?